commentary tradition and kind of the history of exegesis of how Christian commentators in the early church and in the medieval period and into the Reformation period have interpreted the Song of Songs and used it as a resource for Christian spirituality. But then I was invited to write this epilogue chapter in a book that it was edited by Timothy Robinson, who's a GTU PhD graduate, did his work here now over 20 years ago. And his dissertation was actually on the poetry of Edward Taylor, who was an American Puritan theologian, preacher, and poet, and whose poetry is very much influenced by the Song of Songs. So that's how Tim got interested in this topic. And then he put together this really neat companion in for Brill that came out last year that's arranged chronologically. So, starting with the earliest, I think Origin is in the first chapter, and then it goes on up. And the series that it's in, Brill's Companions to the Christian Tradition, is supposed to stop at 1800. But Tim and the editor for the series thought, maybe we should have something at the end, an epilogue on what has happened since 1800. And so Tim asked me to do this. And it wasn't because I'm an expert on things that have happened since 1800. Not my thing, but I was really interested in this topic. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'm sure I'll discover some interesting things. So in this epilogue, I started with, as you can see here on the first page, looking at historical critical readings of the song that have developed in scholarship. But there are also then sections on interreligious readings and on the use of the song in liturgy and worship, on hymnody, and then there's a section on art and music. And that is how I discovered some of the things that I'm going to be showing you today, and others that I keep discovering as we go along. So this first image is from a kind of limited edition book of illustrations of the Song of Songs by Edward Wolfe. And as you can see, it is illustrating the verse, "Many waters cannot quench love," but I am pairing it with the verse in the song, the famous "I am black and beautiful," or in older translations, sometimes translated, "I am black but beautiful." So, the Hebrew can be either way, either an adversative or just a conjunction. So here we have depiction of what is obviously supposed to be King Solomon with the crown and with his beloved, who is in embrace. And I just wonder, what do you see in this picture that interests you? Anybody?
Well, it's interracial, right?
Yep.
That's what immediately jumps out is, Solomon is lighter skinned. The beloved is black and beautiful. Yeah.
So it really emphasizes her blackness in contrast to his lighter skin. Yep. What do you see about her kind of the positioning? For me, it looks like, they're embracing, but look at her right hand, well, really both of her hands, but her right hand kind of turning back, and she's kind of turning sideways. To me, it evokes a kind of, in a way, modesty, but also of her autonomy, She's not just kind of dependent upon him in this. It's definitely he's taller than she is, but he's not dominating her in that sense. She is that there's a kind of reserve, it seems to me, and that's a theme that I just want to pick up as we go through, looking at some other examples of both art and music, is the kind of what this relationship, which is not in this depiction and in most of the things that we're going to be looking at today. This is not an absorption where the two lovers are kind of melded into each other. There is really, it's more about the maintenance of the distinction and of their, in many cases, as we'll be seeing, the challenges, the things that keep them apart, as well as the things, sometimes in the Song of Songs, the parts that we hear the most about, that you hear read at weddings, or that you often see in even in artistic depictions, very much emphasize the unity, the coming together. But much of the song is actually about either the seeking and the longing and the desire, or about the difficulties and challenges that these lovers are facing. And I think there's a bit of that in here as well. Kind of to go along with that, I don't know if you know Sinead O'Connor's Dark I Am But Lovely. Has anybody heard this? Are you familiar with this at all? It's not on her greatest hits. This is from the Theology album that she did back in 2007. Sinead O'Connor, of course, the Irish singer, songwriter. And that whole album is really interesting. She has everything on there is done twice, once in acoustic and once with a full band. And this one that she wrote is the lyrics are a paraphrase of not just from one part of the Song of Songs, but from various parts of it. And it's not any existing translation. I think she's doing her own kind of paraphrase. And the last stanza, at least the last three lines, I don't think is an exact paraphrase even of any part of it. The rest of it does seem to be. But I just want to play this for you. Oh, here comes Jonathan. Please let him in. Great. All right.
Dark I am, yet lovely as tents of Kedar, as the pavilions of Solomon. Don't hate me because the sun is darkened me. All mine other sons were surrounded me. They made me watch
All right. Welcome, Jonathan. I see you on there. It's great. And I'm seeing things in the chat. Good. Excellent. So yeah, Devin, tell us about when you said you saw echoes of Blake's Little Black Boy, was that about the picture we were looking at before?
No, the song by Sinead O'Connor
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the Song of Songs, how much she's sort of cribbing from the biblical pretext and transposing, but that's a very controversial poem by Blake, but it has sort of a sub theme of sort of racial disparity between black and white, and this longing on the part of the little black boy to be loved by the white boy. I don't have the lyrics in my mind, but just it had sort of a similar the racial tension that's sort of, there's even sort of an erotics, I'd say, in Blake's little black boy. I think it closes with wanting to be touched and petted.
Yeah.
Then I'll stand, I have it right here. Then I'll stand and stroke his silver hair, and then I will be like him, and he will then love me. Is how Blake's little black boy. Who knows? I mean, Kate's a better expert on this than me. There's a long history of sort of Irish 20th century musicians channeling Blake here.
Yeah.
And I think Blake in turn is deep, his songs and then his experience are steeped in the Song of Songs as sort of a biblical precedent. So maybe that's the shared commonality here is the biblical text and not necessarily Sinead O'Connor thinking of Blake.
Yeah, well, the influences run in all directions when you're the Song of Songs functions as a kind of hypertext all through history with this. As I was saying, this pretty much everything here is taken almost, I mean, directly from the biblical text, kind of her paraphrasing in some ways, but you can trace everything here except maybe the last couple of lines. You can say what verse it comes from, so that, and she has changed it to dark I am. Well, and then Jonathan can tell us about the Hebrew for that, which is often translated either as black or as swarthy or dark. Jonathan, you want to comment? This is an interactive piece, man. You got to work.
Some have suggested it could refer to like she's sort of tanned or blackened, like because she's working in the fields.
Right.
So there's the whole question, like, do we read it as an ethnic signifier or as just sort of a statement of the harsh reality of agrarian life?
Yeah. Yeah, and so people say she's dark because she had to work. I mean, her brothers made her go out in the vineyards, and so she got sunburned, that kind of thing. Or is it that in part of the tradition of interpretation, this is the Queen of Sheba, and so she actually, there is that kind of racial ethnic aspect. But what O'Connor has done here is to make it, I think, about her. I mean, she's reading herself, it seems to me, into just the way she sings it, into these lines. And dark and I am, I don't know, from what we know of her own biography, I can't help but think of the darkness that she's struggled with, mental illness, all kinds of things, and there's this longing, the kisses of his mouth, and then at the end, tell him love isn't done. Tell him don't leave me alone. That part I don't see in the Song of Songs exactly, except the longing is certainly there, but exactly the way that she put it. I'm going to keep going. Kate, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to belabor this, Arthur, if you want to move on, but I was just going to say that there's been a conversation about images of the Virgin Mary having dark skin. And, some people said, oh, they're dark because they've been touched, emotional touching, or they're dirty because of, candle soot and other things. And recently, an art historian from the Wellcome Collection said, actually, this is symptomatic of cultural whitewashing, saying that they're dark because they're dirty. And she actually took a survey of images, and a lot of them, I mean, not all of them, but many were actually created out of purposefully dark material like mahogany or dark metals. And I was having a conversation with James Natty about this, who's our new Hebrew Bible guy at JST, new Old Testament guy. And he was saying, this is really interesting because there's a womanist theologian called Renita Weems. And Renita Weems says a similar thing about this passage. And she says that that actually the farm labor interpretation is also kind of cultural whitewashing, because it's saying that she's dark because she's in the field and laboring, when actually she might have just been ethnically dark, and that's part of her beauty. But it's really interesting also to know about the Hebrew, because I think I am a scholar of Panofsky and stuff, who kind of said that that the "but beautiful" was a mistranslation. So I'm glad to know that that it's actually it could be either way, which is interesting. So anyway, that's all. Just wanted to.
Yeah, no, thank you. Interesting and frustrating in that, I mean, it's hard to bring closure to this discussion, and to see that there are, so much of this, it depends on the context. There are whether you want to use that dark but beautiful, black but beautiful, black and beautiful, dark and yet lovely, to use that as referring to an affirmation of who she is, or as a way of describing the struggles that she is dealing with. And you can look at it either way. Some other things I want us to look at. So I'm going to move on here. If I can get this to work. Yeah. So this is on the art side. He Qi is a Chinese Christian artist, and we have in the exhibition, the online exhibition for CARE, another one of his illustrations of the Song of Songs A, I guess that is, that's in the CARE collection. And so we've seen that, which is bright yellow and green colors, and shows the lovers in a very close embrace. Actually so much so that their faces are melded together. This is a different view of the Song of Songs. For me, the things that I think, how would you know that it was the Song of Songs if you didn't have the title here? It's clearly at night. And you see, I put up a couple of a few verses that to me kind of get picked up in here. Look, he stands behind our wall, gazing in at the windows, looking through the lattice. So you clearly see the lattice there on to the right of the woman's face. And I'm trying to think, is that her lover playing the flute next to her? I suppose he's not looking through the lattice, but maybe he's calling her, inviting her to come out and play. I'm not sure, or to let him in, as it is in the Song of Songs. And then you also see the cityscape behind her, which is interesting because in the other Heike illustration, it's a pastoral scene where they're out in the fields, and but here this is clearly the urban scene that speaks to me of that. In the third chapter of the song, upon my bed at night I sought him whom my soul loves. I will rise now and go out about the city, in the streets and the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him but found him not. So there's that not finding, not being fulfilled in the desire. And in the top left corner, there is, I'm taking it to be the same woman again, this time on the walls of the city. And it looks like she's waving something that I'm taking to be the veil or the mantle that gets stripped off of her by the sentinels or the watchmen who are guarding the walls. We'll get to that in a little bit later. But to me, that must be what it is. So, which is a kind of the greatest moment of desolation in the song, where she not only can't find her lover, but she's actually beaten by the watchman as she goes about looking for him in the streets. Those are just some initial thoughts. Anybody else? What do you see there?
I was just going to say that actually the buildings are Chinese style, and the lattice work is also typical, you know, this wooden lattice pattern. But the male who's playing some kind of flute is very interesting because he's wearing not a costume, but, you know, traditional wear of southern China, like Yunnan, I think we could say maybe Yunnan province or something like that. So that's what I got.
Yeah, thank you.
And his name is pronounced He Qi, not to be pedantic, but
Okay.
these Chinese characters are He Qi.
Good. Thank you for, I did not know that, and I'm glad.
Unless you've studied how to pronounce Chinese syllables,
Right.
you don't know, because it doesn't conform to the English system of pronunciation.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and all of his work has that kind of blending of Christian traditional iconography along with the Chinese cultural and iconographic symbolism as well. So it's sometimes the lattice is a good example of things that work in both contexts, coming from both sides of his own personal story, as it were. Anything else?
I would just say I thought her cloth or whatever she has there was, you know, the same as his, the thing that's wrapped around him. I thought there was like a relation there.
Yeah, well, maybe, I mean, it's the same color, isn't it? So it picks up the red that's there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see, I think, okay, this is kind of an interlude in the way that I just wanted to, this is something I quoted actually in that article that I wrote. This is a quotation from Nick Cave. If you know him, another singer-songwriter, sings with the Bad Seed, Nick Cave and the Bad Seed. And he says that the Song of Songs was for him a major influence on him, on his, the love. Not everything he writes is a love song. Some of it's very unlovely, but when he writes a love song, he says he's inspired very much by the Song of Songs, which he considers the greatest love song of all time. And okay, good. Desi's a big fan of Nick Cave, and so I'm live. Yes, he was just recently here. And he's someone who has suffered a lot of personal tragedy and pain in his own life, including, sadly, just this week, he lost his second son, who at the age of 31, who died, and he had another son who died some years ago. And he's had a lot of other tragedies as well. So he knows pain. And what he says here, I think, is just terrific. For the love song is never truly happy. It must first embrace the potential for pain. Those songs that speak of love without having within their lines an ache or a sigh are not love songs at all, but rather hate songs disguised as love songs and are not to be trusted. These songs deny us our humanness and our God-given right to be sad, and the airwaves, that is the radio, are littered with them. The love song must resonate with the susurration of sorrow, with the tinabulation of grief. The writer who refuses to explore the darker regions of the heart will never be able to write convincingly about the wonder, the magic, and the joy of love. And for me, that says a lot about the Song of Songs, which is, again, the parts that often get quoted are the, spring is here and my lover is, here comes my beloved and everything's great. But there is so much of the song in the Song of Songs that is about the separation and the longing that is not fulfilled, and about the difficulties that these lovers are facing. I think that's, it makes the song so much richer when you appreciate this, that side of it as well. This is not contemporary art, but it's modern art of this sort, or late, anyway, it's pre-Raphaelite is what it is. This set of windows, which is, if it's not unique, it's at least really unusual to have a whole panel of stained glass windows in a church devoted to the Song of Songs. And there's a wonderful study by Fiona Black and Cheryl Exum. You can see the citation there, where they just unpack this panel and read it in relation to the source text, the Song of Songs, and try to see what what Burne-Jones has done with the story, because he's rearranged the order of things. He has each verse, each panel, I mean, each window there has a quotation from the song underneath it, but they're not in canonical order. And so he's kind of given the story a different twist. And the whole thing is fascinating. I'm not going to go into all of that now, because I want to just focus on one of these panels. Well, actually, this is the question, Kate. You're asking, do you read them from bottom to top? This is really interesting. How do you do this? The way that Black and Exum suggest you might do it is to say in the top row, you have, here's the man who's wearing a crown, so presumably Solomon, and here's the woman, and then the daughters of Jerusalem in the middle. So at the top, they're saying you kind of introduce the characters. And then at here, you actually, here in the bottom right, you have what you might call the consummation, or at least the marriage. So here the two are together. It's the only frame in which they're really, joined together in an embrace. And then here is the daughters of Jerusalem who are being invited to look at the lovers. So you can kind of see it from moving to, it would not be the traditional way. So it's kind of moving toward a culmination here. But the panel that I want to focus on is this one here, which is about the, again, that disturbing scene where the woman has left her home. She's out in the city, in the streets, and looking for her lover. She can't find him. And then the watchman, and this is from the King James Version that Burne-Jones would have known, the watchman went about the city, found me, smote me, wounded me. And that's what's quoted at the bottom of the panel. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. And that's what I was saying and before when we were looking at the illustration from, now I'm not going to try to say the name because I know that I don't have it right. That red cloth might, I think, be the veil or the mantle that is being stripped away from her there. And here this is actually a lantern. So the watcher on the walls has grabbed her. This is clearly, he's not being, he's being aggressive here. But this is at first I thought he was going to punch her in the face, but he's holding a lantern. So it's kind of ambiguous what exactly he's doing at this point. But the part that I wanted to pick up on particularly is this at the end of this section where the bride says, or the woman says, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him that I am sick of love. And of course, at the time that that translation was made, this doesn't mean I'm tired of love. It means I am sick with love. Or, I mean, the verse is now usually translated something like I'm faint with love. I'm overcome with love. You see, it's love sick in that sense. Not that I'm tired of being in love, but that I can't stand it anymore, kind of thing. Which then made me think of this. And I'm not going to play the whole thing because we're just to give us time, but just this is a better known song, I'm sure, but we'll hear a little bit of it.
I'm walking through the streets that I did. Walking with you in my head. I feel so tired. My brain is so wired. And the clouds are weeping. Did I'm sick of love. I wish I never met you. I'm sick of love. I'm trying to forget you. I just don't know what to do. I'd give anything to just be with you.
All right. So we know that Bob Dylan knows his Bible. And when he writes a song called Lovesick that has the recurrent phrase, I'm sick of love, I'm pretty sure he has the Song of Songs in mind with that. So talk to me, people. What do you think about this? How does this relate to the Song of Songs, or does it? So just look at the last, I mean, what do you, if I'm right, that this is in some way alluding to the Song of Songs, what does the last stanza there indicate? But, you know, is this someone who's trying to stop loving, or is this someone who is lovesick in the sense of, well, he says, I'd give anything to be with you, that kind of reversal. Any
Well,
thoughts?
Arthur, just to jump in, I don't know in particular to that last question you had, but Dylan knows his Bible. He also knows his blues history. And I wonder if there's also another layer of sort of a history of the Song of Songs in American blues music that's being telegraphed here.
Sure.
And that the you is more than the beloved. You know, there's a theology going on here too.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the Song of Songs in the background.
Yeah, we haven't talked about, in this session so far much about the ambiguity of kind of the human and divine. You know, who is the you that is in there, and that, but that's another way of reading anything that's in a love song is, you know, the way in which the beloved even the human beloved becomes a not just a symbol or a metaphor, but actually an instantiation of that which is beyond, of that which we all desire, of the more. And so, yeah, and yet there is the frustration, but there's also the ongoing determination to pursue the object of desire. I'm going to just keep moving on because I got a couple more things I want to show you. This is from another Hebrew Bible scholar, Carrie Ellen Walsh, in her book Exquisite Desire, talks about the importance of the couple in the song not consummating their relationship sexually. Now, there is some debate about whether there are parts of the song that could be read as referring to kind of subtly to consummation. But even if that's the case, it goes right back into the desire, longing, seeking register right after that. It's certainly not a kind of the end of desire fulfillment. There's this continual pressing on. And she says, this process, longing tells us about ourselves. Who we are is our desire, what our soul loves. So this ongoing desire. For something different, this actually has come out only since I finished that article, so I wasn't able to include it. But this is the only one that I can find so far of a hip hop R&B allusion to the Song of Songs, and the name of the song is Song of Solomon by an artist called Shadow the Archangel. And look at this verse here, or this line, these couple of lines here, don't activate our love until it's the right time, which is pretty much a direct translation of don't stir up love before it's time. And this is only 1 minute. The dance mix version that we have here on YouTube just has this what's in the first left column here. The rest of it is on the larger version on the EP, but not on the dance mix.
Shadow. Yeah. Told you I feel butterflies when we together. We can just chill until we doze off. Just not let she be judged. We can talk whenever. You don't have to sleep when you keep your clothes on. Just want you to feel like better than the best minds. Don't activate our love till it's the right time. Till you are my bride, then it is nighttime. Your satisfaction plus all the commitment you go. Romance revival, give you a title. My wife, my lifeline, my help, my lifeline. You have a rival. Romance revival, romance revival, romance revival. I told you I feel butterflies. 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 Shadow.
All right, whoops, I want to go back. So Shadow the Archangel has a commentary on this in which he explains that he wrote this song really in protest of what he says hip hop has become with its violence and misogyny and failure to appreciate the romantic side of love. And so for him, this, as he says, the refrain is romance revival. He wants to stimulate a revival of romance in hip hop and R&B. And there are other biblical allusions in here as well, as he points out, judge not lest ye be judged. And there are other aspects in here as well, repent. But it interests me to see that the Song of Songs, which we've talked about in earlier sessions in kind of this series that CARE has sponsored, of how the Song of Songs has inspired body positive claiming for women who are to appreciate their own bodies, to stand up for their own autonomy and such. And so there's that aspect of it, the kind of certainly celebration and affirmation of pretty raw sexuality. But the same text here is also being put into the service of modesty and romance and the resistance to that kind of focus on sexuality. So I found that interesting, and all again, just how many different people from different perspectives making use of this text. I'm going to move on. This is the last one, and I was going to end with this just because it is another appropriation by, in this case, Matt Johnson, who's the lead singer and really the only kind of continuing member of the punk, I'll usually call something like a post-punk or alt-rock group called The. Is there, do you all know The? Is that, this was, Desi does. Desi knows a lot of more about this than I have. But this one I'm just going to play, and then we'll spend the rest of the time, you can reflect on it, because here you really have a multimedia presentation. This is not just the words and the music, but also in the video, and this is the official video, the images that go along with it, some of which are disturbing and some of which are very poignant. So Matt Johnson wrote that song after his brother died. Was the impetus for that. And I guess I just say again how the Song of Songs has been a resource for people in so many different ways, coming from so many different places, so many different cultures, but within the song itself, there are all of these, and you can see as different people have focused on a different verse or a different theme or a different mode to make it work for their own purposes, but also to be drawn into the song, I think, from different places. So we've just got a few more minutes, but I want to turn it back over to all of you and see what thoughts you may have, or comments, reactions to, particularly to that last video.
Maybe just a really quick remark, Arthur. I don't want to hog the time. I said it too much already. I love how you've brought out the, I don't want to say universality, but sort of the supple flexibility of the Song of Songs to be adapted by all these different moments in different cultures, sort of a universality to it. And that's striking for me because I'm keenly sensitive to sort of the way the Song of Songs has been marginalized and exorcised from certain strands of Christianity, including notably the Swedenborgians in Swedenborg, who didn't like the Song of Songs. So he writes it out of being part of the word. So, you know, it has this adaptability, but on the other hand too, it's disruptive within normative Christianity, and is contraband. But you know, maybe that says something about the power of its sex, drugs, and rock and roll into Bob Dylan and beyond.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what struck me about this, and is that in the Song of Songs actually appears to have a greater influence now outside of the churches than it does within it, at least as for in the contemporary scene. Emily, no, I don't know this. Tell us about it. Angel Bat Jawed.
Yeah, I just posted a link to her. She's yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, yeah, I missed some of that.
No, but we didn't have that.
She is both a classically trained clarinetist and sort of a free jazz vocalist, and her she's been kind of like on a meteoric rise because like she's really amazing. But she did an opera based on Song of Solomon. She calls it Cosmic Love Opera. Yeah, so I just sent a link
Wow.
that talks about it. I don't this was something that was a performance, so I don't know if the music to it exists or is online, but I interviewed her, and she's very interested in the the way that like Black bodies are erotically and like lovingly depicted, and so like this is like part for her, like you know, the basis for using the text was like in sort of like reveling in that like loving treatment of Blackness.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you. It's too late for this session, but I'm teaching the course on this in the fall, and I can guarantee you that will be a part of what we'll look at then. Because I started by saying, you know, I've taught the course before. It's been pretty much a sort of history of exegesis thing, and I think it's morphed into this time it's going to be a lot more about. Well, definitely it's a reception history approach, but it's going to have a lot more of this contemporary material than that I've gotten hooked by, because there's so much here. Yeah. Anybody else? I know we've come to the end of the time, so.
Just to say, Arthur, I know that we seem to have lost Jonathan, and I'm sure that you know that his new book manuscript has just come out, and it's called, but for other people that are interested, it's called Planting Letters and Weaving Lines, Calligraphy, the Song of Songs, and the St. John's Bible. So that's really exciting. Jonathan's an alum of our program, JSTGTU, so it's a second book already.
Yes, yeah, that's a terrific book. I got to write a blurb for it, so it's on there, and it's amazing what he does with that. Good. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Say there's lots of material here. We could keep going, but you know, just to keep exploring, like the Song of Songs, an interpretation thereof. The very last verse, you know, of the Song of Songs is make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag upon the mountains of spices. So make haste, or it's probably a better translation, is flee away. This object of a desire, the lover that is being pursued, at the very last verse, it's still running on the hills, and we just keep chasing it forever and ever. I think that's the message that I get from that final verse. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Arthur. I think it's, I don't know, it's so fun to think about, so much fun to think about this. And I don't know, inspiring to think about always having this open-minded approach, you know, to scholarship and to learning and to seeing so many new things and connections. And it's great how it fits right into the exhibition and leads us right to your course in the fall.
Yeah, there you go.
Lots of
And
material.
Emily, I'd love to see that interview. You send it to
I would love to send it too. I really like this approach and this method because it kind of like highlights how songs are like time machines that connect. You know, there's like embedded in them is all this sort of history and memory that goes into the meaning, and you know, you can also like they travel with you, so you approach a song that you've heard before years later, and there's something else in it. And so like thinking of like uses of text in this way as these like sort of portals that are transtemporal kind of opens them up.
Yeah.
Mm.
I am thinking of it too in relation to, like the sort of medieval presentations of the Bible in which you've got the text in the middle of the page, and then all around it, commentary and illustrations. And so everything becomes like a hypertext where it's connected to something else, rather than just having a chronological through line where you're looking for, what's going to happen at the end of the story. There's not an end to the story. There's just an infinite number of paths into the story that we continue to pursue forever, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm like keep bringing back talking, but I feel like there's also like some wonderful traditions in like Hinduism of like erotic poetry that has an ecstatic sort of dimension where the deity is beloved, and there's this like sort of like what strikes us as like a shocking level of intimacy between the female poet and the deity. And this is sort of, this book kind of reaches
Yes.
backward. It like reaches back toward the human.
Yeah. Yeah. Francis Clooney has a wonderful book and another short article where he does a kind of comparative theological reading of the Song of Songs with some Hindu texts that are along the lines of what you're talking about. And there's also connections with Sufi poetry, and pretty much in any religion or many religions you find things that are comparable. And I think that's really just kind of beginning that kind of interreligious reading of the Song of Songs in relation to these other texts. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Okay, Elizabeth, I'll turn it back to you. And
just thank you,
tell us
everyone.
when we have to
coming.
stop. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And Arthur, thank you so much for being here. And a couple of people on the screen, like poor Devin, trying to be left alone 9 p.m., 10 p.m. in Berlin. I'm like, you have to come. It's going to be so great. So I think you know why I was.
It was worth it. I'm glad you insisted.
Pestering a few of you.
Thank
Thank
you
for
coming. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.